I'll take the first. Senator Floyd will follow with the second, and MP Vaz with the third. We have not discussed a timeline for what we believe is an acceptable period by which the government should extend the program. What we are consistent about is that they ought to reopen it, but also give the information to the constituents so they know when, where, and how they can access relief. So if it's even a week that you extend it by, or 3 months, as long as people know, visit these locations at this time, and you will get assistance this way or that way. We're asking for openness, transparency, and communication. We also need to know who is already on the list. And the MPs can serve a great purpose in assisting with this if the government will share with us who has already benefited, who is left to benefit, who won't benefit at all. That will increase our opportunity to assist our constituents in getting the information they need. Senator. Okay.
Before Floyd speaks, I just want to make the point that the roofs program was a program under the budget for last fiscal year that ended in March. That was an allocation under that. There is no provision in the budget for this year for, as I recall, any extension of roof. But the truth is that roof was inadequate. Roof was inadequate, is inadequate, needs to be extended because there are huge unfilled and unmet needs which must be addressed. There are persons who didn't, especially elderly people or more vulnerable people, who didn't know about the program at all. I get messages from people, I got one this week from an elderly lady living near St. Anne's Bay saying she don't know nothing about this roof thing and her house popped down and she's getting wet every time it rains and she's suffering. I'm sure there are many, many cases of that nature. So it needs to be reopened, it needs to be funded, and it needs to be made accessible through information being disseminated through channels which have been shown to work in the past, where people can access the information, and where people who don't know what's going on can find out what's going on. That was totally lacking in the roofs thing. I mean, I have sent WhatsApp messages to the minister asking how the cash component, which was announced that you could get a portion of the $200,000 grant in cash, 75,000, how you access that, because people in my constituency who got damaged and got assessed went to the hardware and couldn't access the money. He told me he'd get back to me. Twice I asked him. I just checked, disappearing messages. That's all gone, but I haven't received a response. And that's kind of typical as to how they operate. Before Dwayne addresses your last question, I just want to add one other point. MP Dayton Campbell, Dr. Dayton Campbell pointed out that small businesses, which proliferate Jamaica and are really the backbone of the economy, have received no real support since Melissa. Many of those businesses suffered severe damage, stock wiped out, the structures that the businesses are conducted from, damaged, some destroyed, and so on. You're not going to have the economy returning to robust levels or achieving. I can't say returning because we haven't had robust levels of growth for a long time in this country. But you're not going to see the economy bouncing back the way it should unless there's a program of support to stimulate activity at that level of the economy. That should be a priority. When you talk about 6.7 billion US of resources that you're trumpeting that you've raised, and yet you're spending 60 million US on housing when the housing stock of the country has been perhaps the biggest asset class of damage, largely uninsured. That shows that, to me, a lack of care and concern and poor policy judgment. What are all these resources going to be used for then? What about the infrastructure of the country, the terribly damaged roads that are preventing people from conducting business, preventing JPS from reaching communities to restore light and making our farmers suffer and our people suffer? There should be an infrastructure restoration project being rolled out now and a housing program being rolled out now. These are critical things. Small business support program being rolled out now. 6 months pass. Time come to see some progress in this area. The people need it. And you're already seeing the signs of social dislocation with people starting to block roads in various parishes and so on in frustration. As the cost of living hit happens, you can only expect that people are going to be more and more frustrated. Well, it's a very serious situation which needs to be addressed. And the next hurricane season is almost upon us. And that is how we're going to be entering it, with our house not in order at all. Literally. I just want to make one point. I'm glad that MP Nikisha Birchall mentioned that on our website you can find an accounting of the cash and kind that we were able to raise for Melissa support and how those funds were expended. And if there are any questions on the details of that, can be directed to our treasurer, Keisha Anderson, who provided that accounting. I'm calling on the government to provide full and comprehensive accounting for all funds received from donors since Hurricane Melissa. I know that diaspora groups are anxious to see an accounting for all the funds that they provided through the government portals. I myself participated at the request of Minister Grange in a telethon to encourage people to give through their portals. There has been no proper accounting for any of those resources. In fact, what we have seen is fundraising events. I can think of one in Florida where funds were routed through a US NGO with which a minister of government has an association. I can't see how that was an appropriate way for handling hurricane relief, where the government of Jamaica is part of the promotion of the event to raise funds. And I hear the Prime Minister is up in New York to beg more resources from the diaspora. I hope that whoever is there will demand of them, of the government, of him, a fulsome accounting for everything that has been received so far and how those funds have been utilized. And I would just close my little intervention now by saying, what you can see from the way this government is operating is that they're in la-la land. The level of destruction and sufferation and deprivation in the areas which were affected by the hurricane remains real, and all we can hear is high percentages of this being restored and that being dispersed and so on. But the impact on the people's lives and residual suffering that people are facing is not being addressed. You raised Laverne. As it stands now, the Auditor General's report focused on the University Hospital and their administrative weaknesses and issues arising therefrom. So there was no direct judgment as to the conduct of anyone else. However, we know what has taken place so far. It was in that context that I thought it appropriate, especially since there are ongoing investigations, I think, by the Integrity Commission, that the action which has been taken should be taken. In terms of and I mean by us on our side, in terms of the Party's Integrity Commission, that is an internal body that advises the leadership of the party on matters to do with ethics and integrity by they can investigate within the parameters available to them. They can at least dispassionately assess what happened and how they feel it should be dealt with. So, that is what will happen. I can't give you a direct time frame for that. And they report to me as party leader. And based on what their findings are and what their recommendations are, I will then consider the situation in the light of that. But that's essentially an internal party process, which is going to be, is being pursued and will help to guide my decision-making going forward. But that Integrity Commission was set up under Portia Simpson Miller and has helped the party. For example, they vet our candidates before a candidate is approved to represent the party, whether at the local government level or at the national level. They go before that committee, submit a fulsome, fit and proper report, and a face questioning on that before a recommendation is then made to the leader as to whether or not that person should go forward. And so it's been a useful structural innovation and assists in matters such as this as well.
Okay, we'll take our final question from online. Siobhan, please unmute and go ahead. Hearing you well.
I have a series of questions, but I'll start with the ones who are directly related. The Prime Minister is, as the opposition leader suggests, is going to take the NARA legislation this afternoon in the House of Representatives. What is his recommendation as to how NARA should be used to address the concerns he's raised regarding housing? And my other two questions are in relation to Mr. Golding's Integrity Commission filings, because usually they would have been made public around October or so in the newspapers, but that was not done in relation to the 2024 declarations. Do you have an understanding as to why there's been a delay, as suggested from the Integrity Commission? And secondly, in the matter of Dennis Gordon, the suggestion is that Mr. Gordon could have potentially breached the Customs Act in terms of making a false declaration. Do you still stand by your suggestion that he has done nothing wrong, or he did not break the law in relation to the Jackson matter?
Thank you. Could you repeat your first question?
About NARA.
What is the Prime Minister's, what is the recommendation Mr. Golding could put forward in terms of how NARA can be used to address the housing concerns?
NARA has been established, as I understand it, to execute projects that Cabinet approves. And in the Prime Minister's budget presentation, he identified a large list of projects that the government wishes to pursue in years to come. Bypass roads, moving communities from one location to another, to free up lands for redevelopment, that sort of thing. So that seems to be the main purpose of NARA. We've heard others, like the Minister of Justice, saying he's hoping that NARA will build some new court facilities. I think these STEAM schools that the government is intent on building, these STEAM academies, NARA is going to do that as well. I don't hear anything about NARA being used to address the current issues facing Jamaicans in the aftermath of Melissa. The current infrastructure challenges that are making life and recovery very difficult. The shelter challenges that many thousands of Jamaicans continue to suffer in. The only program for this was roofs, and roofs was scoped inadequately. Its design was defective because it didn't have any resilience built into it or anything in it to ensure a more resilient approach to housing construction. That was absent from it. So there are clear gaps, and I don't think NARA is the answer for those gaps. I think those gaps just require a focus of the Cabinet on developing a program to address those things and rolling them out quickly and identifying how they will be funded. This big envelope of resources available to the government should be, in my opinion, used to deal with the things that are clear and present needs of the country, so that the country can settle down, so that the country can feel restored and ready to move forward again, rather than being in a post-disaster situation for a protracted period of time. There were two other questions. One was for, what was it, Dennis? Oh, you'll recall last year that there was a protracted period when the Integrity Commission didn't have certain personnel in place as a result of the tenure of existing officers coming to an end, and there was some kind of impasse that delayed the appointments of their successors. And that, I think, has caused some delay in their operations. So that's where that is. I can't comment any further on that.
All right, so continue to engage with the People's National Party on our Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter platforms at Jamaica PNP. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. Have a good morning.